In theoretical as well as applied psychology, no term is more misleading or confusing than the term consciousness. We use the term often in our conversation. We come across it in our study, but when we are asked to define it properly, to explain its significance, its meaning, or the idea for which that word stands, we are unable to do so. And that is because there are so many varied ideas concerning consciousness. There are so many aspects of consciousness. There are so many states of consciousness that we get mixed up. That is, we confuse one with the other. So we must know thoroughly the true significance of the term. Then we can make such distinctions as inner consciousness and outer consciousness. The word consciousness is really derived from the Latin root scio, to know, and con, together. The word consciousness, from the derivative meaning, would signify to know together. We use the term generally in the sense of being conscious of a fact. That is, consciousness means knowing an object, as it were, knowing something. But the word consciousness really indicates two things: subject and object. It implies the duality of existence. There is one who is the knower, the subject, the ego, the perceiver. I know it. I am conscious of it. I perceive it. I think about it. Therefore, there is always the subject, the ego, I, as the background of any form of consciousness. Then there must be something to be conscious of, something which we perceive, something which we know, something which we understand, and that something is the object. So, knowing together means we know the subject and object together. That is, they both exist. One cannot exist without the other. So, wherever there is a subject, there is also an object. That means that wherever there is a thinker, there must be something to think about. Otherwise, there is no meaning back of the term thinker. Whenever we use the term perceiver, we must know that there is something to be perceived. The same is true of consciousness. Whenever we use the term consciousness, we must know it includes both the one who is conscious of something and something of which that one is conscious. Therefore, the word consciousness implies duality. There is another meaning back of consciousness, which we often fail to understand, or about which we do not stop to think deeply, and that is why we miss it. Consciousness not only implies the idea of becoming conscious of a thing or the state of being conscious of something, but there's also the idea of identification back of it. What is the meaning of identification? By identification, we mean a state in which we become almost one with a thing. When we become one with a thing, we become conscious of it. Of course, ordinarily, we may not be wholly identified with it, but the word consciousness indicates that. And judging our modes of thought, or observing the practical phases of our life, we shall see that there is identification. Take, for instance, the word body consciousness. What does it mean? It means that not only are we conscious of the body, but we are also identified with it. I cannot separate myself from the body. I am almost one with it. I have become mixed up, as it were, with the body and its conditions. There the subject or ego is hidden. Only the object of consciousness, the object of perception, is there. The deepest and purest meaning of consciousness is this: the absolute consciousness. There is the Sanskrit word chit. You will come across that word in the study of the Upanishads, in the Vedas, in the Gita. You will find not only ancient sages, but the sages of modern times have been using the term Satchitananda, meaning the divine spirit. What is its meaning? It means absolute existence, absolute consciousness, absolute bliss. These three are not the qualities of the divine spirit, but they are the essence, one with it. So chit is the word of pure consciousness. In the understanding of pure consciousness, we have to eliminate the duality of existence, the duality of subject and object. It stands alone. It is that of which the subject and object are lower manifestations or expressions. It is that which makes everything possible, which gives life and soul to the subject and object. That is pure consciousness, the basic, the fundamental, the principle back of everything that is indicated by pure consciousness. There's a beautiful Sanskrit verse which expresses this idea. No tatra suryo batina chandra tarakam nima vedyuto banti kutoyam agni tameva bantam anupati servam tasya basha servadim bipati katho panishad. In describing the pure, the basic, fundamental principle of life and creation, the pure light, the self-effulgent, self-caused divine intelligence, Vedic sages sang in this way. There the sun does not shine, nor the moon, nor the lightning. What to speak of the mortal fire, that shining? Everything shines. By its light, everything is illumined. By its essence, everything becomes full of consciousness. There is another Sanskrit word which expresses the same idea, kaivalyam, the state of being alone, that which is self-caused, that which is not dependent on anything, that which is freedom itself, which is above everything. There, all differentiation vanishes. Differentiation of subject and object, I and thou. All these ideas are merged, as it were, in that absolute consciousness. So the pure consciousness is that. However, when we apply the term consciousness in our daily lives, in its varied relation to various channels of existence, in our varied experiences, in different states and conditions, we have to understand it from a dualistic standpoint, and we also have to study other phases of consciousness, such as inner consciousness and outer consciousness, soul consciousness and body consciousness. All these terms we bring in to explain the different details, or the different stages of development, or the different stages of experience through which we have to pass. In order to be able to understand the inner consciousness, we must know it in its relation to the outer consciousness. The light can be understood only in its relation to darkness. Praise can be understood only in its relation to blame. Joy can be understood only in its relation to suffering or pain. One who is not really hungry cannot really appreciate the value of food. So many ideas exist only relatively. It is the same with the inner and outer consciousness. We must understand both. Then both become clear. What is meant then by outer consciousness? Outer consciousness means consciousness in which we are cognizant of external things, gross forms, gross objects, sense objects. Now, every moment of our lives, the senses bring in these impressions. The senses come in touch with the external objects, that is, outer consciousness, consciousness of the outer world, the objective world. Outer consciousness must mean this to us. There is the idea of objective perception, and there is the objective world. We know that there is external nature, and all the time we are impressed with this idea. So when we cannot extricate ourselves from the realm and domain of forms and objects, when we cannot rise above the sense perceptions, when we cannot divest our minds of these externalities, as it were, then you will understand this state to be the outer consciousness. Then there is a consciousness within ourselves. You may say that only through mind can we understand this. Only through thought processes can we get knowledge of external nature. What is meant by inner consciousness? Inner consciousness means consciousness of inner forces, consciousness of inner perceptions, consciousness of what is called soul energy, consciousness of the divine in the soul. That is a consciousness of something distinct and separate from the sense impressions, from bodily conditions, from external gross objects, from external perceptions. Now, this question may arise in your mind: why should we try to awaken our inner consciousness? What benefit do we gain by it? We always ask that question. What are we going to gain by it? Why should we try to arouse the inner consciousness if the outer consciousness is as explained? What harm is there in living in the outer consciousness only? Our life means that. Our life means the varied duties of life, the varied responsibilities. Our life means its relation to our fellow beings, to the world, to so many material things, to so many objects, to so many phases of external life. Our life means all this. And what is the harm in living in that state of consciousness? Why should we try to awaken our inner consciousness? Is it absolutely necessary? Yes, it is absolutely necessary for persons in all walks of life. Why? Because while living in the outer consciousness, we are not really contented. We always complain, either openly or mentally. Something is always lacking in our life. Just ask yourself this question: are we really happy? It is not that we have to give up our external life, our material life. It is not that we have to eliminate all these things completely from our life. No. But we have to know where we stand, and we have to understand the purpose and the meaning of our external life, or outer consciousness. We must know why we have to go through life's duties. We must know why we have to perform so many activities. What is the purpose? What is the idea back of it? Why are those condemned who neglect their duties, who shirk their responsibilities, who do not try to perform their functions, their duties properly? First of all, we are ignorant of the meaning and purpose of life. We cannot explain definitely the reason for all these activities. We do not know why we live in the midst of sense perceptions. Why are we experiencing these things? We have certain desires, we have certain tendencies, certain emotions, certain passions. We are regulated by them. We are carried away by them against our will. We are, as it were, enslaved by certain things, and we go on not knowing whence we have come, or whither we are going, or what is the mission of our life. That is why the question was asked in ancient times by the Vedic sages. What is that knowing which everything else will be known? What is that fountainhead knowing which we shall understand the meaning and purpose of life, knowing which everything would be explained? Everything appears to be detached, purposeless, meaningless. What is that knowing which everything would be illumined? We may not be able to explain it, but it is there, and only the sages have put the question definitely. That is why we must try to get into that realm of pure consciousness. There are different grades of inner consciousness. The deeper we search, the more we understand. The more will that pure consciousness be unfolded, which alone holds the key to illuminate, to unfold, to explain everything in our life. We must come to that. There is another reason why we must try to go beyond the outer and enter into the inner consciousness, and that is this. There is always reaction in our life. That is when we live in the external consciousness. Suffering is caused by reaction. Our miseries, our pains, our complaints, our doubts, our troubles, our disillusionments, our despair have always been caused by the outer consciousness. For instance, when we live in the midst of sense perceptions, we want to possess certain objects which we have perceived, impressions of which have been gathered through the senses. First of all, the senses come in touch with external things. It may be a little food, a little form, it may be a little object, but it is there. That impression gets hold of us. And what do we want to do? We want to get that object. We want to possess it. We want to own it. When we cannot own it, there is suffering, there is heart burning. And suppose I love some object. I try my best to possess it. I cannot do it. Something stands in the way and takes it away from me. There is suffering, there is misery. In this way, we are constantly becoming dependent on external things. These outer things, these objects of the senses, get hold of us. They enter our lives and completely hold sway over us, and we are carried away by them. Then we are thrown back, as it were, into ourselves. Nature's laws work relentlessly, and there are changes, there are separations. You may say such ideas bring gloominess, pessimism into our lives. What difference does it make if we become a little gloomy or if we become pessimistic? What has your optimism given us? What do the passing joys bring us? They bring us nothing but reaction. So-called optimism does not land us anywhere. It rather leads us into complex situations and conditions. Rather, we should hail with joy that sort of true pessimism, which brings us face to face with the truth, which enables us to see things in their true color. We must face things boldly. It is not simply by patchwork that we gain in life. It is only by bold search and uncompromising investigation. It is by going to the root and the bottom of things that we truly gain and accomplish something which is worth achieving. So we must not be afraid of analyzing things in a deeper way. You see around you nature's changes and separations. You love a person, that person dies or is taken away to other lands. You are miserable and prostrated with grief. Again, you have possessed certain things and you lose them. And that is what is meant by outer consciousness. It is not that you must not love others, but do it knowingly. Do it not as a slave, but as the witness you should approach these things. Many things there are which must be taken into our lives necessarily. Unhappily, we delude ourselves, we forget ourselves, we lose our heads, we lose our judgment, and we are carried away by the currents of life, not knowing whither we are going. When we are lost in the labyrinthian maze of circumstances, then we wake up for a while. Again, we forget. That is the outer consciousness, which has separations everywhere. As soon as you depend upon anything, it is taken away from you. We must try to search for something which is more internal, which is not so changeable, on whom or on which you can depend to a greater extent, because everything is relative until we get to the absolute. That is why we have to open up our inner consciousness. That is why we want to know if there is anything beyond the veil of the senses. That is why we must know whether there is anything back of this changeable condition of the senses and this changeable condition of the body. Now, you may ask the question, how do we know that there is such a thing as soul energy or that there are inner forces? We know as we know everything in life. How do you know the different details of a machine? You study that machine. We must search thoroughly. Truth can stand all the tests of analysis, all the tests of observation. Many promising lives have been failures, owing to a lack of proper understanding. So open your mind, your heart, your soul to conviction. In the path of concentration, we can rise step by step. It is the most scientific method. There have been instances in which devotion, love, divine love, when not combined with proper concentration or proper analysis, have landed persons in the realm of emotionalism or sentimentality or fanaticism. They are led into the realm of bigotry and narrowness and carried away by these things. So try to balance devotion with proper reasoning, and it will be a great helpful method. True prayer can open up our inner communion and help us to unfold. Pure self-analysis is another method, but concentration has been found to be very helpful for many, many people. As Emerson said, the one prudence in life is concentration. The one evil is dissipation. In war, in politics, in business, in trade, In the management of all commercial and social affairs, concentration includes two things. One is gathering up scattered energies. Another is focusing these scattered energies of mind. Outer consciousness means this: we are dependent on the senses and outward things. When we try to think of inner things, we are held back by our dependence on things external. The mind has been scattered. It wanders among various objects which are impressions in our minds. The mind has been divided. Very little energy is left for the accomplishment of the real ideals in life. But gradually, we learn by concentration how to withdraw the scattered forces of the mind and how to focus them upon the chosen ideal. Nothing worth achieving has been accomplished without a little difficulty, without a little sacrifice, without a little sincere and earnest effort. You know, curiosity seekers never reach anything in life. Those who are sincere and earnest searchers and seekers have gradually unfolded themselves and reached the higher realms of understanding, so there is no real danger in concentration. And we do not know what accumulated experiences and impressions are at our backs. Through different lives and through the present life, we have been gathering up so many things. We are performing so many karmas. Now the yogis, in figurative language, call this opening up of the inner consciousness the awakening of the Kundalini. You will see, if you analyze your life, that there are a few things which are constantly holding your attention. The mind is drawn into certain realms. Sense perceptions are in different forms and include many things. Our eating, our drinking, all sorts of habits, and many other things. The yogis claim that the nerve centers have absorbed these energies, and the energies are chained there or enslaved there, and you have to release them. There are two sides, the physiological and mental. Physiologically, when we begin to practice concentration, this energy is gradually released from the lower centers. It is called coiled up energy in latent form or enslaved form. Simultaneously, our mind is released from its impressions and begins to work in a higher realm. The yogis declare that there is a hollow canal in the spinal column, and that the base of the spinal column, in the majority of persons, is closed. When these energies are released, they must find a passage, and they must be allowed to go through this canal. And as this released energy rises into higher and higher centers, we enter into inner and inner stages of illumination. And when that energy reaches the brain, the highest center, the pineal gland, there the illumination becomes absolute. We reach that pure state of consciousness. As we have physiological experiences, we shall see that the whole nervous system is changing. Our bodies are full of vibrating currents. Our whole life is full of vibrating currents, and we must know how to direct them, how to adjust them. As these physiological experiences go on, layer after layer of the mind is opened up. But you must let these experiences alone. You must not identify yourself with them. In order to eliminate these external conditions and enter into the inner realms of consciousness, we have to rise above the body consciousness. Gradually, you will see a new vista of knowledge and wisdom opening before you. A new land, a new realm of experience is coming to you, and that needs the master mind. We must become the director. Instead of allowing the mind to take the reins, we must take the reins in our own hands. And so you have to tell the mind and the senses and the little things in your life that you are the master. In this way, we have to direct properly, knowing the ideal thoroughly. knowing where we are going, what we are trying to accomplish, eliminating all the selfish ideals, eliminating all the obstacles and difficulties as much as possible. And we are frightened, but you must remember these difficulties and obstacles can be overcome. They come to test our strength, and we overcome them. We unfold our latent and dormant powers. So never give way. Never give up after you accept a method. Be not hasty in adopting a method, but once you have taken it up, follow it with the utmost pertinacity. Follow it with the sincerity and earnestness of purpose necessary for accomplishment in all walks of life and in all fields of achievement. And then go on, day after day, practicing it, following it with unending patience and perseverance. Gradually, a time will come when you will see that there is a realm, or there are different realms of inner consciousness, which are being unfolded to you. By degrees, you will come to that state of divine illumination, which will make you really blessed. The blessedness of that state cannot be described. It must be felt. It must be experienced. We must be absolutely sincere, and we must not apply these things in any other way than for spiritual unfoldment. There is the danger. We have a tendency to apply them in different realms, lower states, and for selfish purposes. We must avoid that. To many, we must remember it may be a life task. For many, it may take several lives. Some may accomplish it in a few years. But whatever time it takes, we must be determined, and we must start with this idea that even before passing away from this life, we will reach a very high state of consciousness, and we will unfold that divine, universal, absolute consciousness, which alone can make us really happy and blessed.